Hey, everybody, welcome back. I'm Susan Linder, your host of the Innovation Storytellers Show. And today we're going to be talking about people in the innovation process, people behind the change making. Because, by the way, innovators, nothing gets done without the people who make it happen. So, if we want to make change, we have to think about the strategies and the techniques that actually get people to move forward with you into the change. We're going to be talking about trust, we're going to be talking about integrity, and we're going to be talking about big ideas and moving people forward into those big ideas. How do we actually get people behind us when we have a big idea? So that's going to be the focus of our conversation today. I can't wait to introduce you to my guest, but I have to let you know that I don't get any big ideas going and out of my head without this tiny little bottle called Magic Mind. If you haven't tried it yet, it's absolutely fantastic. It's just one little shot of this green juice, and I can't tell you what a transformation it's made for me. It's filled with these incredible nootropics that give you mental clarity like this. I take it, I have mushroom coffee in the morning and I take Magic Mind in the afternoon, and it just keeps my brain going without that plummeting caffeine feeling. So it helps me crush procrastination, clear my brain fog, and really get like 100% dialed in. If you want to give it a try, by all means, go to magicmind.com, or you can check it out right on the podcast. You'll find links in there. You get, for a limited time, you can now use my code and get 48% off your first subscription or 20% off of a one-time purchase with the code Storytellers20. And you can claim it at magicmind.com/storytellers20. All right, without further ado, I'm going to dive right in to all good things, and most especially my guest today. So, we are, as I mentioned, we're going to be talking about people moving, integrity, trust, and really taking people into the future. And that's why I'm so glad to have Tracy Nolan here with me today. She is a senior vice president at Humana. She is in charge of lead distribution strategy for all Humana retail products across 6 different distribution channels, managing 100,000 plus agents, delivering more than $3 million in sales annually. She is a Fortune 50 senior executive, a corporate officer, and board member who delivers outsized market share and shareholder value, leading to $6 billion in P&Ls in highly regulated and high consumer trust industries. We're talking telecom, healthcare, and here in insurance. She is transforming multi-channel distribution and developing key B2B and B2C partnerships to get it done. Tracy thrives during times of significant disruption, including mergers and integrations, industry resets, and business continuity crises, all while fostering best-in-class customer and employee retention. So, Tracy, wow, thank you so much for joining me today.
Susan, thank you. I'm so glad to be here with you today. And wow, thank you for that wonderful introduction. I sometimes wonder who you're talking about when when you're doing it, when I hear an introduction like that, because I just see myself as just a normal person who loves what I do.
Well, you're a powerhouse. So let's dive into it. Okay, so tell us first, as the question I ask all of my guests is, how did you get into this? How did you decide to kind of make this move into innovation, of heading up these mergers, of like driving this kind of institutional change? Was that the intention, or is this kind of doing the right thing and then finding yourself in this incredible high tide?
So, Susan, I think if you asked me years back what I would be doing, I thought I would be a school teacher because I love to teach and I love to engage and help people. I never expected to do what I am doing today. And an interesting story is I went to, after college, I came home like everybody else did. I didn't have a job, started in retail, really to part-time because I wanted to get a discount on clothes so that I could show up well in an interview. And I quickly fell in love with with helping people find the right outfits for the right occasions. I love the hiring, the operational piece, the selling piece, the just how to transform what we were doing, and the thrill of being able to do something different. And so I'll just tell you a quick story. And this was really, I wanted to show that we could do something different, which was Sundays were never a big shopping day because it's a shorter sales cycle on the day. You have less hours in the day. And I decided one day that I was going to create a incredible difference in what we could do from a sales day. And so I decided to ask all the top salespeople to work on a Sunday that normally didn't. I decided that I was going to create these like lunch grab bag lunches. So when people came in, they would get a little gift. But the most innovative thing I did is I did a mannequin contest. I took all the mannequins, I put them in the front of the store. I had everybody dress them in different outfits. And I had customers come in and vote on the different mannequins and what they did. And so I've always been thinking about something. And that day we had the top sales in the country in this one little store in upstate New York. And I got more calls from the corporate office the next day about what did you do? Like, what was it that you did? And it literally cost us nothing, but we just innovated a little differently in what we did for the day. So I've always been pushing that envelope a bit from the days of retail, and then I fell into telecommunications and spent a lot of time innovating there, and then moving into healthcare just 2 years ago.
So let's talk about T-Mobile because it's such a big part of your work and places where you've really gone ahead and been at the forefront of one of the biggest mergers in telecom history.
Yeah, so that was, I mean, I started with Sprint, and I want to kind of tell that story a little bit too. Is I was asked to join Sprint in 2015 when a entrepreneurial Marcelo Clare had sold his business to SoftBank. And SoftBank owned 70% of Sprint, and they asked Marcelo, who was an entrepreneur, to go into corporate America and be CEO of a Fortune 100 company. The company at that time, like, he had not run corporate America. He did an incredible job selling his company for over $1 billion to SoftBank. So he certainly knew how to run incredible businesses. But you take an entrepreneur and you put them in an organization that was a big Fortune 100 company, and it was in distress. And he asked me to come in and help change the way we operated from a sales perspective. And Susan, he called me an experiment. I'll never forget. Like, I'm hiring you to be an experiment, and I want you to go up into the Chicago market or the Midwest market, and I'm going to just like tell you, here's your marketing dollars. You run everything. We're going to wall you off compared to everything else in the organization. And can you go in and make a difference? And hey, can you do it in six to 7 months? And most people would say, oh, I can't go change around a Fortune 100 company in that short period of time. But what I was able to do with the team is we were able to actually move not just share of gross ads, but market share in that short period of time. And to
Wait, can I
do
just
that,
ask you a question, Tracy?
yes.
What does it feel like on a job interview to be told, "Hi, I'm hiring you as an experiment. Like, welcome to Slab. You are you are currently going to be the experiment of this company, and we're going to wall you off. By the way, good luck. See you later. Welcome to Gilligan's Island." How did that feel?
I actually lean into what a lot of people will run from, because number one, I knew Marcelo. So like I never worked for him directly, but I knew him, and I saw what he never set limits on what's possible, which excited me. And I knew, as much as I was going to be an experiment, that if I proved what I needed for him, he would give me the support. Now, I will also tell you, he didn't do it in a job interview. He did it on stage, Susan, at my first meeting with all my new employees, and said, hey, we brought Trace in, and she is going to be running this as an experiment. She's an experiment. And I did ask on stage back, what happens if the experiment doesn't work? And he just kind of laughed with me. So I would say that, like,
No
I
actual
would
confirmation of what might go on, but like, welcome to the world of innovation, right?
exactly. I mean, most innovation, to do innovation is not really considered safe. Like a lot of, you know what I mean? Like you have to step out to do it. And I have found through my career, I've had people say, and they did when I was at Verizon, like, hey, you got a safe job, Trace. You've got a great title, you got a great job, great pay. Like just stay, put your head down and stay in it. I find that super boring. And I don't find that people thrive and grow in that environment. If you just want to survive, then I guess it's okay. But for me, staying safe is not what makes people innovate and grow. And so I guess I look back at it now and go, I can't believe that I like, wow, that was a risk, but it was such an incredible risk because what we were able to prove and change. And in 7 months, what we were able to do led us to transform the whole way Sprint operated. I mean, we like what I did there. 7 months later, he texted me and said, hey, can you come to Kansas City for a week? And I'm like, okay. And he said, well, you might want to pack 2 suitcases. This is the way Marcelo and I worked. And I'm like, 2 suitcases for a week? And he just kind of went, ha ha ha. I never actually went back to Chicago after that. I actually ended up living in Kansas City. My husband went up, packed up my apartment, brought it all down to Kansas City. And then my next years with Sprint was running the operations, the sales and operations and strategy as president for the company from a sales perspective for the until merger time, which was fascinating.
Amazing.
It was
Amazing.
fascinating.
Well, I
And
hope you like ribs because that's one of the best things about going to Kansas City for sure.
it is. It is. But you know what was interesting is that the company was in distress and we had a choice we had to make at that time, which was either we're going to close doors down or we're going to innovate to make it to either get to a point where we're either buying someone else. Masa makes a decision to buy T-Mobile, or T-Mobile is going to acquire us. We knew that that was where it was going to go. And some of the innovation we did is, I don't know if you remember, but the famous ads that came out, which was cut your bill in half. And we knew we knew from a pricing perspective that we could do so much better than our competition could, but people weren't giving Sprint a chance at that time. So to get there, we had to innovate and come up with a really catchy, I don't know, we had chainsaws in a commercial that said, bring your bill and zzz, we'll cut them in half. And that campaign overall,
Saws. Am I remembering this right?
yes, chainsaws. Yeah. So
I
we would
remember
hit.
that.
I mean, it was pretty famous. It was cut your bill in half, but it was if you bring in a bill from our competition, we are going to cut your bill in half. And that whole process of we knew we would be able to beat our competition from a price perspective, but to get it to go to half of any bill that came in from Verizon and AT&T at the time and T-Mobile, that was a big innovation just in itself. And what we knew is we needed to be able to visualize it in a way that customers would react. And so it was a really unique campaign. I know we had a lot of discussion whether we should use chainsaws in a commercial or not, but it was pretty fun and it was really impactful from that. And then we went into merging, and I got to tell you, I led a team of well, it was about 12,000 people merging into T-Mobile at the time of COVID. So imagine that I get a call,
Wow.
hey, Trace, all the stores you have, all the people, COVID, this thing called COVID is, and you're going to need to make sure you keep your employees safe at the same time as you need to keep your customers safe in all of your locations. And oh, by the way, the merger's happening on April 1st of 2020. So
Wow.
that was an interesting way of managing change.
Goodness. Like, I mean, the immensity of it is really overwhelming.
It was, and partially because you needed to build trust that this merger was going to be something good for not only our consumers, but also for our employees. And because as our mergers go, you can't have a lot of conversations until you know if it's really going to go through or not. And it took us years to make it to that final stage, which was really in February, we found out, which is right when COVID was starting. So the trust factor and having to do so much virtually to let people have a voice and understand, as we've talked about the importance of the buy-in underneath. It change is one thing and innovation is great, but if the team or the people that are supporting it, selling it, are not bought in, it can go really wrong. And we've seen that with so many industries and companies. Think about Kodak, who didn't innovate quick enough. I'm from Rochester, New York, so that one stands out to me because growing up, everything was Kodak, right? And
That's
then
right.
they didn't innovate, and look at what happened to them. And being able to help people through the process of merging and feeling safe and building trust with a new leadership team. That was definitely an interesting time.
So you mentioned trust in that conversation. And I think it's a component sometimes as innovation leaders that we just make assumptions about the change that we're making. We see it as a value positive, but we don't often check in with our teams to see if they believe in it, they understand it, they are capable of painting a picture of this new future and trusting their leader to take them there and that it will actually be good for everyone involved. What are some of the ideas, Tracy, you think about when how we can bring trust to the equation, really get into the minds of our teams and making sure that we're valuing what they're valuing?
Every time that I've taken on a new role or changed roles, what I've learned is that one of the most people will say, "Oh, what's your strategic plan?" And I always say, the strategic plan, I can write a strategic plan, and I love to think about like where we want to go, where we are today, and then how to get there. But besides that, the key item to all of it is what I call the foundation or the key underpinnings of a business. And I define them as trust, integrity, commitment, execution, teamwork, and the right team. And I say those so quickly because I call them my six success ingredients. And what I mean by that is that anytime I walk into a new role, and I did this when I first walked in at Humana, because no one knew who I was. It's the first organization I had walked into or industry. I did an industry change. No one had ever worked with me. No one really knew who Tracy Nolan was except this new hire that was coming into this organization that wasn't used to having change. And the first thing I think about is, I look at all those six ingredients, trust being the biggest of them, and say, okay, what is, does the team trust me and do I trust the team? And I realize it's a two-way street. It's not a one-way street, it's a two-way street. So I literally do this mind shift, Susan, where I'm thinking about, okay, can I trust them? Can they trust me? And if not, how do we build that, right? How do we build that? And a lot of times it's honest conversation like, hey, I trust that you're doing what's right, but is there something that I'm not communicating or doing? Because I do move fast. So I'm a fast mover and I'm talking away and I just assume people are going to trust what I'm saying. But I actually, by asking people that question, like, is there something that I could do to help build that trust? Just opening that conversation up, or teamwork. Like, I have to demonstrate teamwork as much as I expect others to do team. But as
As much as you
leaders,
might like to run forward alone, right?
right.
You were telling me this story about the goose in the parking lot. Like,
Yeah.
what was that about?
So we were going through a transformation. This is earlier in my career when actually, we were merging into Verizon. So I was with a company called Frontier Cellular that became Bell Atlantic Mobile that then became Verizon. And if you think about that, I was named president of this region. And we changed names and everything we did and how we operated 3 times in 6 months. So talk
Oh my
about
god.
customer confusion. They had different names going up on buildings where they'd go to get service. They got different bills with different names and they were all different. We were changing back offices when it came to like HR policies, how we do it, who does what.
Letterhead. Like,
That I mean, it was confusing to customers, but it was even more confusing internally because we had brand new systems. So the customer service team that we had, well, when we were going through it, the one thing I learned was communication was so key. And people wanted, like a lot of times leaders love to just talk. Like we love to talk, right? But we don't spend enough time listening. And so one of the things that I thought through this change is like, I want to listen and understand what's in the hearts and minds of our employees. So I set up every week a bridge for an hour. And I said, hey, it's an open bridge to anyone in the company. I'm just going to be there. I'm going to give 15 minutes of update, and then I'm going to sit there for 45 minutes for questions. And I'm going to answer your questions. Now, maybe just I can't tell you something because I can't from a legal perspective, or maybe I don't know the answer, but I'm going to be that honest and blunt with you that that's the reason I'm not giving you an answer because I want to be that transparent and I want to build that trust with you. So the first meeting I had, Susan, my teams, my direct teams around me, we get on the call, I do 15 minutes update, and then I open it for questions and there aren't any. And I'm just sitting there and the team's like, so then they start trying to give me those fake questions that are done ahead of time. And I'm like, no, no, no. I know these are planted questions. I'm not doing this. Like, I'm not doing planted. I'm just going to sit here and leave the bridge open. People were so uncomfortable with the quietness of that 45 minutes.
it's like an awkward first date, right? Where they're like, what do we need to say?
And then everybody wanted to end it early. Like they wanted to run to the bathroom on a date, right? Get out of the way. And I was like, nope, we're sitting here. So then the second time that happened, I got started getting some real great questions like, are we going to have more layoffs? Tracy, I'm not sure the medical benefits we're getting are as good as what we've had before. I started getting the real guts of the questions that people wanted to ask. And by about the fourth or fifth one, I was getting every question that people had on their mind. And it was amazing because people just were able, by being able to ask questions and not feel judged, not feel like they were not important questions, people started to feel better. So my example that I use all the time is the question I got about the goose in the parking lot. And to this day, people send me pictures with a goose when they see them in a parking lot because this customer service team had windows that overlooked the parking lot. So imagine they're taking questions, right? Like they're taking questions. And every time a car was going around, for some reason, this goose decided to sit in one spot and wouldn't leave. It just was there. What they found out was this goose decided to have a nest and was laying its eggs in the parking lot. And every time a car would come in, it would go fast around this corner. The goose would get all upset and the people would gasp because they were concerned about this goose. So somebody asked me on the call, Trace, I know this seems a little strange, but we are really upset about this goose in the parking lot. It's not moving. It's been out there for days. It constantly is getting upset and trying to like, can we do something? So I asked the question, what do you want to do? And they're like, we want to pardon off part of the parking lot. And so cars can't go running by. We want to put some food and water out for this goose. And we want this goose to be able to have, its nest and have lay its eggs. And I was like, this is such a simple ask. I had no idea that this was something so important to the employees of the company and something I could do tomorrow. And by doing that, it built this trust level that no question was too crazy or hard or not
Or
important.
small or insignificant. Yeah.
So I use that a lot and I tell the story because that open line of communication develops a trust level that is like no tomorrow. And that team was able to rally that year through 3 name changes. That team, it gives me chills to think about it, but that full team had the highest year-over-year productivity in the company and the highest profitability. And they went through 3 name changes, and we were a smaller region of Verizon at that time, but we were a mighty one, and the culture was the reason that I actually was promoted to go run a larger region for Verizon after that, because culture is at the heart of making any innovation, any sort of merger acquisition successful.
Yeah. And so I feel like, Trace, you're the big experiment that goes from place to place to place. So you're now experimenting in healthcare, right? You're taking on going from telecom to healthcare. That's a pretty big shift. Tell us what it's like to be innovating and bringing your team along in this new space.
It is so exciting. So I am also a constant. So I think you said it right. I've been called an experiment often. I like to take on hard problems and I actually do run to them. And what for me was, and I'm a constant learner, so I'm always taking some sort of class, learning, listening to podcasts. Yours is one I absolutely love. I was listening this morning before we got on, but walking into healthcare, and I did have some people who said, "Ooh, Trace, like you've had a long career in telco. Maybe you should just stay in telco." So when someone says that to me, that's usually means, "Ooh, I'm going to challenge this and see what I can do." Right. But healthcare to me, it was really near and dear to my heart. Not many people know that my father actually worked for Blue Cross Blue Shield way back in the day. And I remember stories growing up, stories of people who needed care, who either wasn't able to get care or didn't understand care. And I've always been fascinated. My parents being old, they had me later in life. Unfortunately, both have passed away, but I took care of them. And I'd be the one, Susan, adopting all the patients on the floor where my parents were when they were ill, that didn't have family around them, because I just think it's such an important part of to be there for people when they are going through something highly difficult. So this is the side of Tracy that comes out in leadership, but it's like I really do personally care about people and their well-being. And so when this opportunity for Humana came along, I wasn't looking. They called. I had a headhunter reach out, not once, but twice. And then what was amazing for me with Humana was the first conversation I had with Humana was going to be my hiring leader. And I thought, wow, that's impressive that first of all, you didn't go through all of the different steps to HR steps to get to the person who actually is. And I was fascinated by the fact that healthcare is so complicated today. It reminds me a bit of wireless, when wireless in the beginning years ago, when we had analog phones, that was hard to hear and it took an hour and a half to sign up for the right plan and do all that. And I felt like if I could come into healthcare and just help make it more consumer member friendly and
Mhm.
easier to what the benefits are so that people understand what they're signing up for, that it would be great. Because my brother's of that age, and I remember him saying when he turned 65 before I got into healthcare, Trace, don't worry, because when you get there, I have spent, and he's a professor, a college professor. I've done all the research, I've got it down. I'm going to be able to teach you all you need to know about Medicare Advantage in about an hour and a half. And I went, wow.
Wow.
So for me, what's super interesting is that this transition has been a great reality of understanding how complicated our healthcare system is today.
Mm.
And my focus is in how do I help bring a consumer focus to it and make it much easier to understand. And the idea of being able to improve member health outcomes is at the center of all that we do. And so it feels great, because if we can just do that over and over and over again each and every day, it's going to help people out, and that's what it's all about.
And not an easy time to be in healthcare, right? Not an easy time. There's a lot of scrutiny and a lot of attention and a lot of shifts going on in Washington, right, that are making us look more deeply into our healthcare, how we get it, who's paying for it, et cetera. So as an innovator, the job is to consistently tell stories that that allow other people to get on board with our direction. And I'm curious if you found ways of how you communicate the story to your teams to get them interested and excited. I often share with executives that a strategy written on paper is fiction. It is a beautiful idea. It is a brilliant idea, but it is an absolute fiction until it is executed. And the only way fiction turns into reality is by getting other people on board who believe that fiction to make it real. And so the job of the leader is to be an exceptional storyteller whereby the dream becomes one that we all want to live in. So how do you cultivate that in your work, Trace? And how have you done it before?
Well, it's so true because I joined an organization who, I mean, again, I said they didn't know who I was. They hadn't had a new leader in that organization for probably 15 years. So, and they were doing incredible work and had incredible results. So here I come, the innovator who I see all the great work that they've done. They're exceeding goals all over and they're looking at me like, why would you innovate? Like, just kind of like come in and let us do our thing because that's what's doing it. But what I find is what I do is I really spend time communicating a vision, but bringing them along and understanding the vision and having them be part of the vision going forward, not just telling them, right? Like, so well, the first meeting I had with them was like, okay, so it's great where we are today, but imagine what the future is. What if instead of having to call in and have a 58-minute conversation to decide on your health benefits for someone. What if it was so easy that you could literally know that based on this person's history, which is already in the system, or we already know it, what if we were able to quickly identify Mrs. Linder, here's the 6 things that I believe are important. Can you just prioritize those and then quickly be able to give them a solution and then explain the whys behind it, why we think that's the best solution. Right now, we find out where Miss Linder lives and that there's 26 different plans, and then we have to try to figure out which one of those plans makes is right for that person and ask multiple questions. And like there's got to be an easier way that we make it more personable. And it's just like asking in wireless, we used to ask the question, like people would say, well, how much data do you want? Well, you and I wouldn't know off the top of our head how much data we needed on a phone. But if I asked you, Susan, how many text messages do you have today? Like, do you do on a daily basis? We probably can tell that. Like, changing that whole mindset of innovating on how we talk to consumers, how we help figure that out. And then everybody's like, ooh, that sounds great. Well, to do that, then we need to be able to innovate to be able to get there. So by showing what that future vision is and bringing them along on it is super important. And then also being super honest. So I'll go back to the situation where we are merging in the middle, the mass amount of people that were merging into T-Mobile. And people would say, well, we've done it at Sprint this way. So why do we have to do it this way at T-Mobile? And I'm like, because you know what? There's 2 competing ways of doing it. We've done it differently. We're just all going to jump on to this one because if we sit here for the next 6 months trying to decide which one is better, we're going to eliminate. It's going to be 6 months of back and forth where we could already be on that plane. And I always tell people, like, through innovation, it's kind of like getting on a plane. Now imagine getting on a plane that doesn't have seats yet, Susan. So we're going to put 200 people on a plane. Okay, we're going to get on the plane. The plane's going to take off, but we're going to build
I,
those seats while we're on the plane, right? Like we're going to
I think
build.
I've been on that trip on spring break. I might have been on that plane. Yeah.
We're going to build it. We're going to build it while it's there. But and we're going to build it because, like, if we wait to build it, we're not going to get. It's going to take us so much longer to get there. It's going to be a little rocky because your seat might not be perfect right away, but we're going to figure out those seats on the plane. We're going to hit a little turbulence on the way because we're going to make a couple mistakes. Like it's okay to make mistakes to innovate, because if you're not making mistakes and you don't hit a few turbulence, then you're not going to get to the best possible outcome. And then you're going to fly to this beautiful island, and you're going to get to this island, and the island's going to be great, but we might be sleeping in tents right away. We may not get to the houses right away. And just giving people the reality that things are going to change. We're going to have to innovate through it, and that we're going to touch base and have those open communications as we go is so critical in any of those steps, because leaders who get up and say, this is what we're going to do and this is how we're going to get there, are not going to have those key underpinnings that I talked about before that are going to get us there from an innovation perspective. So
Absolutely.
Humana had to, like, I had to get people to see that that what we're doing now is great, but what we can do and how we can transform is this incredible situation that we're going to be able to give. And wouldn't it be great to have people feel amazing about knowing what they've signed up for and understanding their benefits and being able to get the best from their benefits that they have, because
Mm.
that's really a healthy person.
So it's time for us to move into our hot seat questions. Tracy, are you ready?
I am ready. Hopefully I'm ready.
Okay. What is the greatest innovation of all time?
I'm going to say wireless. I have to say wireless technology. Being able to be in touch with people anytime. I remember the days that my brother was in college and had no way to call us except to line up for some sort of phone. And the ability today, like to be able to see family live at any time and not miss a sporting event of a niece or nephew, is pretty cool. I can watch almost anything from where I am. So I mean, it's probably because of my background, but that to me is pretty cool.
God, I just still remember that spiral cord in the kitchen and me trying to get any amount of privacy while trying to call a boy was, or being called by a boy, either one of those two was just murder. Like,
It totally was. Or the phone would ring and you're thinking the whole family knows somebody's calling me, right? Like, oh boy.
100%. Yeah. Privacy. Um, Number two, we are here to dispel the myth that innovation happens with one person and one lone genius alone. If you could join any innovation team in human history, which team would you have liked to have been on?
Think
Mm,
Apollo 13.
everyone loves an astronaut on this show. Let me
I
tell
mean, I know, I just say that because thinking about how to bring them home, and that whole, like that movie, like it's actually giving me chills. Like I can't imagine the pressure and the innovation that they had to try to think of, because they had such limited resources in space that they could work with to try to get them home. They couldn't send them stuff, right? Like they could, like they had what they got to get them home, and that's pretty amazing.
Yeah. And I love watching Hidden Figures and learning
Oh, that's another one of my,
about
yeah,
the women whose title was computer, right? That was their job title, computer, because they were the computers. Like it's
yes.
interesting.
Well, and the
Um,
fact that they had to walk so far to go to the bathroom, like just the way, like there's so many great parts about that show.
yeah. And how far we've come. And lastly, if you could innovate anything, something that really pisses you off or something that you wish existed for all of us, what is the thing you wish you could innovate?
That's a really good one. I still, while we've gone so far from the travel industry and being able to get to places, I would really like even a quicker way to be able to get places around the world. Because I think it's so important. I had an opportunity to go to Asia, spend some time negotiating contracts in Hong Kong, Korea, Taiwan, and China, and that experience, just to understand how people live and work in different areas. I wish I could take all the 13 to 15-year-olds and people that don't live in the United States, and not getting political, but just having people see how the world works, I think it was super impactful to me. It helped me have a different life perspective than I could, and I would love more people at all incomes to be able to see and do some of that travel.
I agree. This anthropologist agrees with you. See, if people want to get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Certainly through either my LinkedIn or through Facebook or even through my email. So love to talk to anybody anytime. Thank you for having me on the show.
Tracy, thank you so much for joining me today.